So first we'll start with the definition of diabetic kidney disease. So as you all know, the diabetic kidney disease, it's a recent term for the diabetic nephropathy. So diabetic kidney disease, it is defined by a persistent albuminuria, that is albumin excretion rate more than 300 milligram per day. So here you should know that normal albuminuria is albumin excretion rate less than 30 milligram per day. When it is between 30 to 300 milligram per day, it is called as microalbuminuria. And when it exceeds beyond 300 milligram per day, it is termed as macroalbuminuria. So for diabetic kidney disease, it has to be persistent albuminuria, that is albumin excretion rate more than 300 milligram per day, at least at two occasions at a distance of 3 to 6 months. So only one finding of albuminuria, we cannot label a per patient as a diabetic nephropathy or a diabetic kidney disease patient. So we have to have this persistent albuminuria. We should be able to spot this albuminuria at least 2 to 3 episodes in a gap of 3 to 6 months. Then it is this albuminuria is associated with a declining glomerular filtration rate and the rising blood pressure. So we can say this is a triad of diabetic kidney disease: albuminuria along with a declination in the glomerular filtration rate and the rising blood pressure. So there are n number of complications with the metabolic disease like diabetes. But why diabetic kidney disease is an important complication? Because it is relatively affecting about one third of the patients with insulin-dependent diabetes mellitus, and also the type 2 diabetic patients are also suffering from this diabetic kidney disease. And second thing, the albuminuria or the proteinuria, which is the hallmark of the diabetic kidney disease, it is also a marker of cardiovascular system or cardiovascular accident, which is the second most cause of death in India. So, being a common element for kidney disorder and cardiovascular system, the diabetic kidney disease that is considered as an important complication amongst the other complications of the diabetes. And the third or the most important is that there is an optimistic evidence that the progression of diabetic kidney disease and its associated mortality can be ameliorated by early intervention. So if we can pick up the patient at an early stage, then we can reduce the mortality due to the nephrotic disease or kidney disease. So that is why it is considered as an important complication. So if we are able to pick up the cases at an early stage, then we can improve the quality of life of a patient, and we can also decline the mortality rate due to nephropathy in diabetic patients. So this is the reason why it has been given an importance. So here again, I'm showing you the incidence or the prevalence of renal dysfunction in type 2. Approximately 40% of the patients of type 2 show the signs of CKD between stage 1 to 5, and 20% of type 2 diabetes patients show the signs of renal failure, that is EGFR less than 60. So that is how the renal dysfunction is also common in type 2 along with type 1. And if we consider the Ayurveda, then also the diabetic nephropathy is an important complication because it comes under the Trimarma. So Basti is one of the Trimarma mentioned in Ayurvedic Samhita. So being a disease of Basti, diabetic nephropathy stands to be a important complications amongst various complications in diabetes. Now, when it comes to the early identification, so we broadly see that the clinical renal involvement, it is invariable, and it invariably happens between 10 to 20 years of onset of type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And we can say that there is a better relationship between onset of type 1 and its diagnosis, which leads to predict the onset of renal involvement. While in type 2 diabetes, at the time of diagnosis only, sometimes the kidney damage is present. So we have to screen the patients accordingly. That means if a patient is of type 1 diabetes, we have to screen annually, because chances of landing into the kidney disease is more prone in type 1 than type 2. So annually after the diagnosis of type 1 diabetes, we have to screen the patient for the evidence of diabetic kidney disease. And in case of type 2 diabetes, we have to screen 5 years after the diagnosis and then every year, that is annually. So in case of type 1 diabetes, after the confirmation of the diagnosis, every year we have to screen the patient for kidney damage or the kidney involvement. And in case of type 2, we can wait till 5 years and then we can do the initial screening after 5 years of diagnosis, and then we have to screen them annually or every year for the presence of the kidney disease. And in patients, if they are having albuminuria and if they are having retinopathy, then it strongly suggests the evidence of diabetic kidney disease. So that is also one of the case. So every patient of albuminuria or proteinuria, if they are having some retinopathy, then it is clearly the kidney disease which is accompanying in that patient is due to diabetic kidney disease and not due to non-diabetic kidney disorders. So when we think about the early diagnosis or the early detection, we should know the various parameters, or we should know the various lab tests which we can with which we can diagnose the cases. So the earlier the gold standard test which was considered for the diagnosis of diabetic kidney disease or any kidney disease rather, that was 24 hours urine. That is, we used to detect 24 hours urine protein in that test. It is considered as a gold standard test up till now because it has got low cost, and then advantage is that it is cost effective. That is the only advantage, and disadvantage is it is time consuming. It requires highly motivated patients to collect the 24 hours urine. Then the 24-hour urine also requires refrigeration of that urine, and it is cumbersome because if the urine is not collected properly or there is inaccurate collection, then the result can get wrong, or there can be inaccurate result and it can delay the diagnosis. Then one more test which was in use was a dipstick test. So dipstick, it is also on it's not very good test because it has got false positive result if the urine is very alkaline, or if there is presence of hematuria, or if there is very concentrated urine or contaminated urine, then it can give false positive. And also the drugs like chlorhexidine and all, there is a drug interference with the result. And the false negative is like if the protein is not albumin, like in case of multiple myelomas and all, then we can get the false negative test. And if the urine is too dilute, that time also the dipstick can give us the wrong result. So nowadays, which test which is more preferred or which is accepted is ACR, that is albumin creatinine ratio. The first and foremost advantage of this albumin creatinine ratio test is it can be done in spot urine. There is no need to collect the urine for 24 hours, and it is also not necessary to get a first urine sample or the first morning sample. We can do it in spot urine or any urine in that case. And it's like this test correlates well with the albumin excretion and has got strong association with the renal damage. It is said that it is 71.4% sensitive and 98% specific. So we know the difference between sensitivity and specificity. Sensitivity is the ability of the test to correctly identify the those which are with disease. So that confirms the true positive rates. And specificity is ability of the test to correctly identify those without disease. So there is true negative rate. So that is the difference between sensitivity and specificity. So specificity means once the test is positive, it is confirmatory of the disease. Sensitivity is what? Every disease, every person having disease will be get catch in that lab test. So that is sensitivity, and specificity is particular to that particular disease. Means once it is positive, it is 100% the disease itself. It is not uh, uh, false positive or true negative. So that is the difference between specificity and sensitivity. So ACR is said to be 71.4% sensitive and 98% specific. And it's like it depends on the fact that if we assume a daily creatinine excretion rate about 100 milligram and the normal urine albumin excretion, which is permissible, that is less than 30 milligram, then the albumin creatinine ratio should be less than 30 milligram per 1 gram of creatinine. So the normal range for the ACR is 30 milligram per 1 gram of creatinine, and that is called as ACR ratio. So this ACR ratio is preferred over 24 hours urine because of n number of reasons which I have mentioned just now. Then the second parameter or the investigations which we should rely upon is EGFR, because sometimes it happens that the creatinine value may not give us the severity of the condition, because for one creatinine there can be a different prognosis depending upon the age. So GFR is the good indicator for the kidney disease rather than the creatinine level alone. So EGFR is generally calculated with the help of creatinine only. And GFR, there are 3-4 formulas with which the GFR is calculated, but the most preferred formula is known as CKD-EPI equation, and the full form of CKD-EPI is chronic kidney disease epidemiological prognosis initiative equation. So there they consider gender, race, age, and creatinine value, and they calculate the EGFR. We have got various apps. We can get the QX calculator app from the Play Store, and there we can get this CKD API equation. And there you just have to put the values of gender. Means we have to put whether the male or female, then the race, whether African or non-African, then age of the patient, and we just have to enter the creatinine value, and we get the EGFR get calculated by that app. So that is very easy. Anyone can download it from the Play Store, and we are easily able to find out the EGFR value. And the last but not the least for the lab test for the diagnosis of DKD is serum creatinine. But as I've told, we should not rely upon creatinine to determine whether the kidneys are in good position or not, because for one creatinine value, EGFR differs widely. So we have to depend upon EGFR to know the health of the kidney or the status of the kidney. Second formula which is commonly used for GFR is MDRD equation, that is modification of diet and renal disease equation. But there has been various studies which have been conducted on this formulation. So amongst that, it has been proved that CKD-EPI equation is more accurate than the remaining one. So we generally rely upon this CKD-EPI equation, that is chronic kidney disease epidemiological prognosis initiative equation. So for the confirmation of DKD, we have to depend on ACR levels. Then we have to go for EGFR, and we have to consider the creatinine value. And one more test here we can go for is the sonography, because in diabetic kidney disease, the size of the kidneys get reduced, but it's like it depends upon it depends on the opinion of a radiologist. So that doesn't it is not that way very reliable, because dimension of the kidneys may differ depending upon the radiologist variation. So we don't rely much upon the size of the kidneys. If we have the same report, means we have the previous report from the same sonography center, and if there are variation in the size, then we may rely upon that report for that in that case. So diagnostic evaluation, these three ACR, EGFR, and creatinine we have to consider. Now here comes the progression, how the diabetic kidney disease is progress. So initially it's like there is onset of diabetes mellitus, and after the onset of diabetes mellitus, there is rise in glomerular filtration rate. So what are the reasons of this glomerular filtration rate rises? This glomerular filtration rate rises or increases because of hyperperfusion, glomerular capillary hypertension, increased filtration surface area, and as glomerula becomes hypertrophied. So these are the reasons why initially there is increase in GFR. So after increase in GFR, there is basement membrane thickening, and there is mesangial expansion, and then there is tubular hypertrophy. And these basement membrane thickening, mesangial expansion, tubular hypertrophy, it leads to increased sodium reabsorption, and these increased sodium reabsorption will increase the systemic and renal perfusion pressure to maintain that sodium balance. And these increase in systemic and renal perfusion pressure will increase the pressure in the glomerular capillaries. Increased perfusion pressure gets transmitted to glomerular capillaries because there is generalized vasodilation in case of diabetes. So because of increased systemic and renal perfusion pressure, that pressure gets transmitted to glomerular capillaries, and when it gets transferred to glomerular capillaries, there is increased intraglomerular pressure, and these intraglomerular pressure rise will increase GFR in initial stage. And once there is rise in GFR, there is disruption of the glomerular membrane permeability, and these glomerular membrane permeability when get disturbed, it leads to proteinuria. And once the proteinuria exceeds 50 milligram per day, the blood pressure begins to rise. There is hypertension. And once the albumin excretion rate or the proteinuria it rises to 100 to 300 milligram, the GFR declines or GFR starts declining. And once the GFR falls below 50 ml per minute, there is rise in creatinine level, and all this lead to end-stage renal disease. So initially there is rise in GFR, then there is basement membrane thickening, mesangial expansion, tubular hypertrophy, sodium reabsorption, increased renal perfusion pressure, increased systemic pressure, which get transmitted to glomerular capillaries. There is increased intraglomerular pressure, then there is increased GFR. Due to increased GFR, there is disruption of glomerular membrane permeability, and then there is proteinuria. And once the proteinuria starts, when it exceeds 50 milligram, there is rise in blood pressure. When it exceeds 100 to 300, GFR starts declining, and when it falls below 50, creatinine starts rising, and then there is end-stage renal disease. So these are the GFR changes which causes hyperfiltration or increased GFR. Here you can see this is the normal glomerulus, and this is the diabetic kidney disease glomerulus. Here we can see there is afferent vasodilation and efferent vasoconstriction. Here we can see the increased filtration of sodium chloride and glucose. Here we can see the increased reabsorption of sodium and chloride. There's decreased delivery, distal delivery of sodium chloride. So all these afferent vasodilation and efferent vasoconstriction, this sodium reabsorption, all this causes the systemic and the renal perfusion pressure rise. And once there is rise in perfusion pressure, there is increased glomerular pressure, and due to increased glomerular pressure, there is hyperfiltration. And then once there is hyperfiltration, then this glomerular membrane becomes permeable for the protein, and they start leaking protein. So that is the basic pathology. So when we say proteinuria is generally due to capillary damage. It's like increased perfusion pressure gets transmitted to glomerular capillaries because of generalized vasodilation, and the damage to the microcirculation in the large vessel that reflects the proteinuria. So that is why the proteinuria happens in diabetic kidney disease. So glomerular hypertrophy, mesangial expansion, tubular hypertrophy, and hyperplasia will lead to increased sodium reabsorption. These increased sodium reabsorption, to maintain the systemic pressure, there is augmentation in systemic and renal perfusion pressure to maintain that sodium balance which has been reabsorbed. Then there is increased perfusion pressure in glomerular capillaries because of generalized vasodilatation in the diabetes. And when there is increased intraglomerular pressure, that will cause disruption of the glomerular membrane permeability, and that will lead to proteinuria. So what are the other changes which happens along with albuminuria or proteinuria? There is urinary IgG excretion. There are changes of hyperlipidemia. There are changes of increased fibrinogen, so increased platelet aggregation. And what exactly happens in nephrons? So the changes in nephron in diabetic kidney disease, they are generally divided into three types: earliest change, then early lesion, and then established lesion. So up to earliest change, they are quite reversible, but once they go into lesions, then it becomes irreversible. So the earliest change is, first there is glomerular enlargement, and then there is glomerular basement membrane widening or thickening. Then the early lesion consists of mesangial expansion, and then there is further basement membrane thickening in early lesion. And the established lesion consists of nodular sclerosis, marked mesangial expansion, there is afferent and efferent hyalination, and there is microaneurysm. So these are the changes which happens in nephron. Basically, diabetic kidney disease, we have to think of three things. One is basement membrane thickening, mesangial expansion, inflammatory changes, and oxidative stress. So these are the four pathological events which we have to keep in mind when we are treating the diabetic kidney disease. Now, why there is rise in blood pressure? Because of increased systemic pressure. So, once the albumin excretion rates exceeds beyond 50 milligram per day, then there can be a reduction in filtration capacity due to mesangial expansion, and there is further increase of extracellular sodium volume where plasma volume remains normal. So to maintain that sodium balance, there is increase in renal perfusion pressure or the systemic pressure. And hypertension accelerates the rate at which albuminuria increases and GFR decreases. So it's like it's a vicious cycle. Once there is excessive albumin excretion, blood pressure starts rising, and once it starts rising, it will further accelerates the albuminuria, and it will further decrease the GFR. And then finally, all this will lead to reduction in GFR. This reduction in GFR is caused due to reduction in glomerular filtration surface area due to mesangial expansion. So initially what happens whenever there is mesangial expansion, it is compensated by the glomerular hypertrophy, but it's like after some times the mesangial expansion is so marked that GFR cannot be maintained by this mechanism of hypertrophy, and then it results into irreversible decline in GFR. So initially what happened, when there is initial mesangial expansion, there is glomerular hypertrophy, and by hypertrophy patient they maintain the GFR, but once the mesangial expansion is so marked that GFR cannot be maintained by the mechanism of hypertrophy, and then there is irreversible decline in GFR. Now here comes the stages of DKD. So first stage is stage of hyperfiltration. Their kidney damage is little and GFR gets rises, or it is more than 90 ml per minute. Then it is a overt nephropathy. There the GFR starts declining and